The last thing I expected when I opened my apartment door to pay rent was my landlord pinning me gently against the wall, his breath hot on my neck as he confessed he'd fought his feelings for months. In that heartbeat, years of hiding who I was shattered. I was a closeted gay man in a small town, and he was the first to see through my facade. But our stolen kiss ignited a firestorm of betrayal, family rejection, and the fight to claim our truth. The moment I swung open the door of my small Elmwood apartment, a quiet conservative town nestled near Kansas City, Missouri, to hand over my rent check, everything changed. Jordan, my landlord, stood there, his usual calm demeanor fraying at the edges. At 35, he was a pillar of stability, running a repair shop downtown and owning a few rentals, including my modest one-bedroom unit. I was 25, a recent college graduate who fled the city to escape the weight of my hidden truth, being a gay man in a world that demanded conformity. Our fingers brushed as I passed him the envelope, a familiar spark igniting, but this time he didn't step back. Instead, he closed the distance, pinning me gently against the hallway wall. "Alex, I've tried so hard to stay professional," he whispered, his breath warm against my neck. "But every time I see you, I can't keep pretending I'm falling for you." His lips met mine in a desperate, hungry kiss, and in that heartbeat, my carefully built facade shattered. I had spent years burying my attraction to men, terrified of the judgment in Elmwood, where church bells rang louder than reason and every neighbor knew your sins. The small-town atmosphere felt suffocating at times, with its pristine lawns, American flags on every porch, and the constant underlying current of traditional values that seemed to permeate every conversation, every glance, every whispered gossip session at Murphy's General Store. It all began 4 months earlier when I signed the lease. Jordan showed me the apartment, his steady hazel eyes lingering as he explained the terms in a low, patient voice. When our hands touched passing the pen, a jolt ran through me, but I dismissed it as wishful thinking. He lived a block away in a tidy bungalow with a green lawn, always waving when we crossed paths. Each encounter felt charged, a glance held too long, a smile too warm. During those early weeks, I learned more about Elmwood's rhythms. The town woke to the sound of pickup trucks heading to construction sites, the aroma of fresh bread from Stella's bakery, and the gentle hum of lawn mowers on Saturday mornings. Everyone seemed to know everyone else's business, which both comforted and terrified me. Mrs. Patterson next door would bring me homemade cookies while subtly fishing for information about my personal life. Jordan found excuses to stop by, fixing a dripping faucet or checking a creaky floorboard, each visit stretching into conversations about life, dreams, and the quiet loneliness we both seemed to carry. I discovered he was more complex than his steady exterior suggested. He read philosophy books late into the night, collected vintage jazz records, and had a secret passion for painting watercolor landscapes that he kept hidden in his basement studio. One humid afternoon, while tightening a loose shelf, his arm brushed mine and neither of us moved. "You carry something heavy," he said softly, as if seeing through my guarded exterior. I deflected with a laugh, but inside my heart raced. The way he looked at me in that moment, with understanding rather than judgment, made me feel simultaneously exposed and safe. In college, I had fallen hard for my roommate Chris, a straight guy whose easy charm and late-night talk stirred feelings I never dared voice. Chris was everything I thought I wanted, tall, athletic, with an infectious laugh that could light up any room. We'd stay up until dawn discussing philosophy, music, and our dreams for the future. I misread his affection, his casual touches, the way he'd fall asleep on my shoulder during movie nights. That unrequited love left me broken, forcing me to hide deeper when rumors spread and friends turned distant. The betrayal had been swift and cruel. One drunken night, I'd confessed my feelings to Chris, who initially seemed shocked but understanding. But within days, whispers followed me across campus. Friends avoided me, study groups disbanded when I approached, and professors gave me strange looks. I never found out exactly what Chris had said, but the damage was done, forcing me to flee to Elmwood for a fresh start. Jordan had his own scars, I later learned. Pressured into a brief marriage in his 20s by his devout family, he lived a lie to please them. His parents, elders in the local church, had shunned a cousin for coming out, vowing never to tolerate such deviance. The marriage had been a disaster from the start. His wife, Sarah, was a sweet woman who deserved better than a husband who could never love her the way she needed. The divorce had been messy, filled with accusations and hurt feelings that still haunted him. The monthly rent ritual became our unspoken dance. He insisted on collecting in person, arriving after sunset with a quiet hope everything's okay. His voice held a warmth that felt like more than courtesy, and each time our fingers lingered over the envelope, the air crackled with unspoken possibilities. We'd stand in my doorway making small talk about the weather, the neighborhood, anything to prolong these moments of connection. I began looking forward to these visits with an intensity that surprised me. I'd clean my apartment thoroughly, rehearse casual conversation topics, and find myself checking my appearance in the mirror before answering the door. Jordan seemed to sense this anticipation, often arriving with a thermos of coffee from Stella's or a small repair tool he'd forgotten from a previous visit. That night, as our kiss deepened, the world faded, but reality crashed in. A car horn blared outside, neighbors likely gossiping. In Elmwood, being gay wasn't just frowned upon, it was a scandal that could cost you everything. I pulled back, breathless. What if someone sees? Jordan cupped my face, his thumb tracing my jaw. We can't let fear control us, but doubt gnawed at me. Were we ready to face a town that would rather see us gone than together? The weight of Elmwood's expectations pressed down on us like a heavy blanket, suffocating and inescapable. In the fragile days after that first kiss, Jordan and I stole moments in the shadows of my apartment where the world couldn't reach us. We sat on my worn couch, hands entwined, pouring out truths we had buried for years. The apartment became our sanctuary, its faded wallpaper and creaky floors witness to confessions that could have destroyed us in the wrong hands. Jordan spoke of his childhood in Elmwood, surrounded by sermons that branded his feelings as sin. I knew I was different by 12, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. My parents made it clear being gay meant hellfire, so I dated girls, got married, even though every step felt like betraying myself. His marriage had crumbled after 2 years, leaving him with guilt and a family that blamed his coldness for the failure. He told me about the night he'd sat in his truck outside a gay bar in Kansas City, engine running for 2 hours, too terrified to go inside. About the dating apps he'd downloaded and deleted dozens of times, always afraid someone from Elmwood might see his profile. About the dreams he'd had since adolescence of finding a man who could love him completely, followed by the shame that consumed him upon waking. I listened, heart aching, and shared my own wounds. College was supposed to be my escape from a conservative home, but falling for Chris had crushed me. He was straight, oblivious to my feelings, and when I hinted at them, he laughed it off, assuming it was a joke. That rejection drove me deeper into the closet, and when he carelessly shared our talks with others, rumors spread, forcing me to flee to Elmwood for a fresh start. But there were other stories too. The high school teacher who'd made subtle homophobic comments that cut deep. The family gatherings where relatives would make casual slurs while I smiled and stayed silent. The constant exhaustion of monitoring every gesture, every word, every glance to ensure I didn't give myself away. Our confessions turned to softer moments. Jordan traced circles on my palm, his touch grounding. I never thought I'd find someone who gets it, he said, eyes locked on mine. You make me want to be brave. We'd spend hours talking about everything and nothing, his love for old movies, my passion for photography, the books that had shaped us, the music that moved us. I learned that Jordan had always been drawn to fixing things, not just because of his repair shop, but because he found peace in making broken things whole again. Maybe that's why I'm drawn to you, he'd joke, but there was truth in it. We were both damaged goods, trying to heal each other through stolen kisses and whispered promises. But bravery came with risks. Whispers spread faster than we expected. Mrs. Ellis, the neighborhood gossip queen, eyed us suspiciously when Jordan left my place one morning. Her church group was notorious for shunning outsiders, and I felt their stares at the grocery store. The weight of their scrutiny was suffocating. Every trip to Murphy's became an exercise in paranoia. People are talking, I told Jordan over dinner, my voice tight. We'd taken to cooking together, finding intimacy in shared meals and domestic routines. He squeezed my hand across my small kitchen table. Let them talk, this is real. But I could see the fear in his eyes, the way his jaw tensed when his phone buzzed with calls from family members. Tension simmered beneath the surface of our happiness. His phone buzzed constantly with texts from his sister Lisa, pushing him to meet a nice girl at church. They think I'm just picky, he said, hanging up yet another call, the frustration clear in his voice. These conversations stirred memories of my own family's pressure. When are you settling down, Alex? My mom would ask, her tone implying only a wife would do. The questions never stopped coming. At family dinners, aunts would corner me with stories about their friends' eligible daughters. Coworkers would set me up on blind dates with women who seemed lovely, but could never kindle the spark I felt with Jordan. Each failed relationship was another piece of evidence that something was wrong with me, at least in their eyes. A text from Chris arrived one night out of nowhere. Heard you're in Elmwood, miss our talks. It stirred unease, dredging up memories I'd tried to bury. The message felt innocent enough, but I knew Chris well enough to sense something beneath the surface. Jordan saw the message, his expression darkening. Old flame, he asked, trying to keep his voice light. I shook my head, more like old pain. I told him about the unrequited love, how it left me doubting my worth, fearing no one could love the real me. The confession felt like bleeding raw and necessary, but terrifying. Jordan pulled me close, his arms creating a barrier against the world. You're more than enough, Alex, but the past lingered like a ghost, haunting our quiet moments with shadows of betrayal and heartbreak. As our bond deepened, we risked more. Late-night walks became our routine, hands brushing but never holding in public. We developed a language of subtle touches, a hand on the shoulder that lingered a moment too long, fingers that found each other across a restaurant table when no one was looking, the way our bodies naturally gravitated toward each other in any room. One evening, as we kissed against my kitchen counter, his hands sliding along my shoulders, a knock startled us. It was his brother Tom, borrowing tools, but his glance lingered on me suspiciously. The interruption shattered our bubble of intimacy, reminding us how precarious our situation was. Later, Jordan admitted, "My family's asking questions. They sense something's off." Tom had always been the more observant brother, the one who noticed when Jordan was troubled or hiding something. Growing up, he'd been Jordan's protector and confidant, which made his growing suspicion all the more painful. "He keeps asking if I'm dating anyone," Jordan told me one night as we lay together on my couch. The weight of Elmwood's conservative values pressed harder with each passing day. Church signs preached family values, and the local radio station featured frequent rants against the gay agenda. We argued softly about staying hidden versus coming out, the fear of losing everything clashing with our need to be free. These conversations would stretch late into the night, circular and exhausting, leaving us both frustrated and afraid. Internal doubts whispered in the quiet moments. Was this love or just defiance against a world that rejected us? Were we strong enough to weather the storm that would surely come? Could our relationship survive the pressure of an entire community's disapproval? The fragile world we built shattered one stormy night as Jordan and I shared a quiet dinner in my apartment, our first attempt at a real date. I had gone all out, buying candles from Stella's gift section, cooking pasta from scratch, opening a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. Candles flickered over pasta and cheap wine, laughter easing the tension that had been building for weeks until a pounding knock broke the spell. It was Chris standing soaked in the doorway, his eyes wild with an intensity I'd never seen before. Rain dripped from his dark hair and his clothes clung to him like a second skin. "I drove 3 hours, Alex, we need to talk." The urgency in his voice sent alarms through my system. He pushed past me, his gaze immediately finding Jordan, who had risen from the table, napkin still in hand. The scene must have been obvious, the romantic lighting, the intimate table setting, Jordan's protective stance behind me. Chris's eyes widened as he took it all in. "Wait, you're together like that?" His voice dripped with shock and something that looked suspiciously like betrayal. Jordan stood firm, moving slightly in front of me in a gesture that was both protective and possessive. "Get out, this isn't your fight." But Chris, fueled by his own buried feelings and 3 hours of highway driving to work up his courage, exploded with a confession that changed everything. "I always knew you had a thing for me, Alex. In college, I felt it too, but I was too scared to face it." His words came out in a rush, as if he'd been rehearsing them for the entire drive. "Seeing you move on with him, it kills me. I've been lying to myself for years, Alex, about you, about me, about everything." His confession hit like a blade, revealing that my unrequited love hadn't been entirely one-sided, but fear had turned it toxic. The revelation recontextualized every memory I had of our college friendship, the long talks, the casual intimacy, the way he'd sometimes look at me when he thought I wasn't watching. "You could have told me then," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Instead, you let me think I was crazy, that I was reading signals that weren't there." Chris ran his hands through his wet hair, leaving it disheveled. I know, I was a coward, but when those guys started asking questions about you, I panicked. I thought if I told them about your feelings for me, it would prove I was straight." Before leaving, Chris made the decision that would change everything. In a moment of spiteful jealousy disguised as confession, he snapped a photo of Jordan and me with his phone and posted it online with a vague caption about hidden truths finally coming to light. "What did you just do?" Jordan demanded, but Chris was already backing toward the door. "I'm sorry," Chris said, but his eyes showed more satisfaction than remorse. I needed people to know." By morning, the photo had spread through Elmwood's social circles and beyond like wildfire. Jordan's phone lit up with furious calls from family members who'd seen the post shared by mutual acquaintances. His father's voice boomed through the voicemail speaker. "This is a disgrace. You're no son of mine." The pain in Jordan's face as he listened was devastating to witness. His mother's sobs followed in the next message, her voice broken and pleading. "Jordan, fix this or you're dead to us. We didn't raise you to be this way." Each word was like a physical blow, and I watched Jordan crumble a little more with every syllable. My parents called too, their voices cold and distant in a way I'd never heard before. "Alex, is this true?" my dad demanded, his tone sharp with disappointment. When I admitted it was true, the line went silent for long, agonizing seconds, followed by a text that arrived minutes later. "You're not welcome until you repent." The rejection was a physical ache, years of careful hiding undone in one cruel moment of exposure. Public hate surged with frightening speed. Notes appeared on my door with messages like "Fags don't belong here." Someone threw a brick through Jordan's repair shop window with a note tied to it that simply said "Abomination." Jordan's repair shop lost half its clients within days, as whispers of abomination trailed him like shadows through the downtown area. Longtime customers who had trusted him with their vehicles for years suddenly found other mechanics. The financial impact was immediate and devastating. A supposed friend from my old job, Mark, added fuel to the fire by liking and sharing Chris's post, spreading it to local forums and employment networks. I confronted him in the parking lot of Murphy's General Store. "Why betray me like this? I thought we were friends." He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "People deserve to know the truth." Stereotypes painted us as deviants, threats to Elmwood's moral fabric. Letters to the editor of the local newspaper called for boycotts of Jordan's business. The rhetoric was dehumanizing, reducing us to political talking points rather than neighbors and community members. Internalized shame clawed at me too, the years of religious conditioning creating doubt even in the face of genuine love. In a heated moment alone, I snapped at Jordan when he tried to comfort me. "Did I drag you into this mess? Would you have been better off staying in the closet?" He shook his head, tears falling freely. "No, Alex, we've both been hiding too long. This isn't your fault." But I could see the doubt in his own eyes, the way he questioned whether our happiness was worth the destruction surrounding us. The situation escalated when Jordan's family staged an intervention at his bungalow. I watched from my car across the street as his parents, his sister Lisa, his brother Tom, and several relatives descended on his home. His father's voice carried across the yard as he shouted, "You're choosing sin over family." Jordan stood his ground on his own front porch, his voice breaking but determined. "I'm choosing love. You taught me to be honest, to live with integrity, so here I am. This is who I've always been. I'm just finally brave enough to stop lying about it." They stormed out, vowing to cut him off completely, leaving Jordan standing alone on his porch. The betrayal from Chris, the abandonment by Mark, the rejection from our families, and the town's venom pushed us to the edge of breaking. We questioned everything, whether our love was strong enough to survive this level of opposition, whether we should just give up and go back to hiding. The aftermath of the outing was a storm of raw emotion and desperate choices that threatened to tear apart everything we'd built together. Jordan arrived at my apartment that night broken and hollow-eyed after his family's ultimatum. "They told me to choose them or you," he said, collapsing into my arms, "but losing you feels like losing myself." We argued fiercely that night, our voices echoing off the walls as years of suppressed fear and anger bubbled to the surface. I accused him of faltering, of not being as committed to us as he claimed. "You say you love me, but when it gets hard, you hesitate. You look at me like you're calculating what I'm worth against everything else you're losing." He fired back with equal pain and frustration. "And you're still haunted by Chris, letting his betrayal make you doubt us. Every time something goes wrong, you act like this is all some mistake, like we're not worth fighting for." The words cut deep, unearthing years of internalized homophobia that we'd both carried since childhood. "Maybe they're right," I said in a moment of weakness, slumping against the kitchen counter. "Maybe we are sick, maybe this is just rebellion." Jordan crossed the room in 3 quick strides, his hands gripping my shoulders with desperate intensity. "Look at me, Alex. Tell me that the way I love you is wrong." In that heated moment, something shifted between us. Instead of tearing us apart, the pressure began to forge us into something stronger. Jordan grabbed my hands, his eyes blazing with newfound determination. "I'm done hiding, Alex. I'm scared, but I'm all in. Are you with me?" I nodded, tears burning my eyes as I finally let go of the fear that had controlled me. Together, no matter what. The promise felt like a vow, binding us not just to each other but to a future where we refused to live in shame. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Chris returned, looking haggard and remorseful, his usual confident demeanor replaced by obvious guilt. "I didn't mean to ruin your life," he said, voice shaking as he stood in my doorway. "I was jealous, seeing you free while I'm still trapped in lies. I loved you in college, Alex, but fear won." His confession twisted the knife of past betrayal, but it also revealed the depth of his own pain. "You had a choice," I told him, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "You could have trusted me with the truth instead of destroying me to protect your lie." "I know," he said, tears streaming down his face. "I want to make this right, Alex." I demanded he delete the post and make things right publicly. To his credit, Chris followed through immediately, posting a lengthy public apology that took full responsibility for his actions. He admitted his cowardice, his betrayal, and his own struggles with sexuality. Mark, my former coworker, faced his own reckoning as mutual friends learned about his role in spreading the hate. He approached me at a coffee shop, his apology halting and clearly rehearsed. I was wrong, Alex. I got caught up in the town's judgment, and I forgot that you're a person, not just a headline. The climax came at a town hall meeting originally called for routine community updates but hijacked by outrage over our relationship. The Methodist Church had organized their congregation to attend, and the Baptist Church followed suit. The small municipal building was packed beyond capacity. Jordan and I attended hand in hand, hearts pounding as we walked through a crowd that seemed to part before us. The hostility was palpable, whispered comments, pointed stares, and the occasional muttered slur that followed us to our seats in the back row. When Pastor Williams from the largest church in town took the microphone and called us a threat to the moral fabric of our community, Jordan surprised everyone by standing up. The room fell silent as he made his way to the front, his hand never leaving mine as I followed him. Jordan took the microphone, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. Love isn't a threat. Denying who we are, that's what destroys communities, families, lives. I've hidden for 35 years, afraid of your judgment. Alex showed me that freedom is worth fighting for. His words split the room down the middle. Some people booed loudly, shouting scripture verses in condemnation, but others listened with growing attention, and a few even began to nod. A teacher named Sarah Martinez stood up next. My daughter is a lesbian. She's 17, and she's been talking about suicide because she's so afraid of how people like you will treat her. A mechanic from the other side of town followed her lead. My brother's gay. He moved to California because he couldn't stand the hatred here. I haven't seen him in 5 years. One by one, other voices joined in, family members, friends, neighbors who had LGBTQ loved ones they'd never spoken about publicly. The tide shifted visibly as the meeting progressed. What had started as a coordinated attack became a community conversation about acceptance and family. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a beginning. My parents called a few days later, their voices tentative but not hostile. We don't understand this, Alex, my mother said, but we don't want to lose you. Maybe we could try therapy or at least try to learn more. It was a crack in the door, not full acceptance but not complete rejection either. Jordan's sister Lisa reached out too, her text message simple but meaningful. I was scared, but I miss my brother. Can we talk? Family doors were beginning to crack open, not fully accepting yet, but no longer slammed shut against us. The fight had cost us both dearly. Jordan lost more clients and had to take a part-time job at a garage in the next town to make ends meet. I faced workplace harassment and had to change jobs entirely, but we stood firm, proving that gay love was worthy of respect. As the initial chaos settled into a new normal, accountability began to take root in unexpected places throughout Elmwood and beyond. Chris faced significant social fallout as friends and colleagues learned the full scope of his actions. More importantly, Chris began the difficult work of confronting his repressed identity. He entered therapy with a counselor who specialized in LGBTQ issues, and over the following months, he slowly came to terms with his own sexuality. His transformation wasn't immediate or easy. Years of denial and self-hatred don't disappear overnight, but he emerged as an unlikely advocate, speaking at local schools about the harm of outing people and the dangers of stereotyping and prejudice. I spent so many years hating myself that I forgot how to love others, he told me during one of our careful reconciliation conversations 6 months later. What I did to you came from that self-hatred. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I want you to know that every day I work to become someone who deserves it. Mark, the coworker who had amplified the harassment, faced his own consequences and journeyed toward accountability. His employer required him to attend diversity training after learning about his role in the incident. He apologized publicly at a community event organized to promote understanding. I participated in spreading hate because I was comfortable with other people's pain. I need to unlearn these biases. Jordan's family began the slow, difficult process of healing and education. Lisa, his younger sister, organized family therapy sessions where their parents could grapple with decades of religious dogma and cultural conditioning. The sessions were painful but gradually created space for honest conversation. They're learning to see me as their son, not a sinner, Jordan told me one night, his voice soft with cautious hope. Dad actually asked me about you yesterday, not to condemn, but to understand. It's a start. The progress was measured in small moments, a phone call that didn't end in argument, a birthday card that included both our names. My own parents reached out with their first tentative overtures toward reconciliation. We don't want to lose you, my mom said during that first awkward dinner, her hands twisting her napkin nervously. We may not understand this, but we're trying to learn. My father surprised me by pulling out a book he'd been reading about faith and sexuality. I'm trying to understand how to be a good father and a good Christian at the same time, he said quietly. Maybe I've been doing both wrong. The vulnerability in his admission broke something open between us that had been frozen for months. Elmwood's transformation was slower but increasingly visible. The town hall meeting had planted seeds that began to grow in unexpected places. A support group for LGBTQ residents and their families formed, meeting quietly at first in the library's community room, then growing bold enough to advertise their meetings publicly. A local diner owner named Frank surprised everyone by hanging a small pride flag in his window and posting a sign declaring his establishment a safe space for everyone. When some customers complained, he stood firm. "Love is love," he told the local newspaper. "If you can't handle seeing people be happy, you can eat somewhere else." Jordan and I found ourselves becoming inadvertent activists, speaking at community events and schools about LGBTQ issues and the importance of acceptance. We shared our story not as victims but as survivors, people who had found love despite opposition and were working to make sure others didn't have to face the same isolation and hatred. Our relationship deepened and stabilized as the external pressure eased. No longer forced to hide, we could focus on actually building a life together rather than simply surviving from day to day. We walked Elmwood streets hand in hand, still drawing some stares but no longer caring about the disapproval of strangers. One quiet evening under a starlit sky, as we walked through Elmwood's small downtown area past shops that were slowly becoming more welcoming, Jordan pulled me close outside the old movie theater. "You've shown me that I'm enough," he whispered, his breath visible in the cool autumn air. I kissed him there on Main Street, slow and deliberate, a public declaration of love that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "You taught me that love beats fear," I replied. "Even when fear seems stronger, love wins if you're willing to fight for it." The seasons changed, bringing new challenges and new victories. Jordan's business slowly recovered as word spread about his integrity and skill beyond the narrow confines of prejudice. I found work with a progressive company that valued diversity. We bought a house together, a small bungalow with a front porch and a garden where we could grow something beautiful. Years passed and what had once seemed impossible became reality. We married in a quiet ceremony held in the community center where we'd first told our story publicly. The guest list was smaller than we might have hoped in a perfect world, but it included the people who mattered most, family members who'd learned to love us as we were, friends who'd supported us through the darkness. My parents attended, their presence still somewhat tentative but genuine. They sat in the front row next to Jordan's family, who had traveled further emotionally to get there. When Jordan and I exchanged vows, my father wiped his eyes with his handkerchief, and my mother reached over to squeeze his hand. "I promise to love you not despite who you are, but because of who you are," I said, looking into Jordan's eyes as our chosen family witnessed our commitment. "I promise to be brave with you, to face whatever comes next together." Jordan's vows brought tears to many eyes in that room. "I promise to choose love over fear every single day, to stand with you against whatever the world throws at us, to be proud of what we've built and excited about what we'll build together." Our wedding inspired others in the community and beyond, a beacon of hope for LGBTQ people facing similar battles. The local newspaper ran a feature story about our wedding with the headline, "Love Wins in Elmwood." The accompanying photo showed us dancing at our reception, surrounded by friends and family who'd chosen love over prejudice. Perhaps the most meaningful moment came during the reception, when Chris approached us nervously. He'd been working with a therapist and had come out publicly 6 months earlier, enduring his own period of rejection, but finding strength in our example. "I know I don't deserve to be here," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "but I wanted you to know that seeing you two together helped me find the courage to be honest about myself. You showed me that authenticity is worth the fight." Our journey through betrayal, rejection, and societal hatred had ended not just in personal happiness but in community transformation. Elmwood was still far from perfect, but it was measurably better than the place where we'd first fallen in love in secret. Young LGBTQ people in the town no longer had to choose between their identity and their hometown the way we'd initially thought we might. For every LGBTQ person still facing judgment, rejection, or the weight of societal expectation, our story stood as testament to a simple truth. Authenticity wins, love in its truest form triumphs, and even the most conservative communities can learn to embrace the full spectrum of human experience when presented with patience, courage, and unwavering commitment to truth. Our love story became part of Elmwood's story, proof that individual courage could transform not just lives but entire communities.